Thank you, Keith. Much appreciated. There are a few questions, I think, in the chat that have popped up. We can go through. Question here, I'll just have a comment from Hamish to me saying, related to the strategic justification, are you able to note what football facilities were submitted for the last few cycles of the FNOSI study from Football New South Wales and Northern New South Wales? This might help for clubs, associations applying for the coming weeks. To answer that, yeah, I have a list of those. So we do provide a list of priority projects to Office of Sport as part of the FNOSI study every few years. Generally speaking, what we do is we ask associations across New South Wales to give us their priority project, because we normally put in about 30 or 31, the number of associations we have across New South Wales. We put those projects as our priority project. So yeah, certainly reach out if you're wanting to know if yours on the list, or alternatively contact your association as well, because their projects are our priority projects. We're not making these up. We're not picking individual ones from clubs. We're getting them from the association. So certainly speak to your association from that perspective as well. What have we got next? I've got a question here from Rowan. For a field drainage project, how do we show inclusion for disability access? Keith?
For field drainage, yeah. You just got, indicatively, you got to show it as part of your master plan for the club. It doesn't have to be specific, obviously, to field drainage. Field drainage is one of the things you're doing to rejuvenate the club, but obviously with better pitch means better accessibility. So you would say that obviously that would come in stage 2 or stage 3 of a master plan project that you're undertaking for the club. And to get the drainage right in the field, it means accessibility for people with disabilities even to potentially get on there, but obviously then disability access would come after the fact. So I'm happy, basically, it would be a separate entity. You wouldn't throw it in randomly or ad hoc, basically, just add it on going, oh, we're doing drainage on the field, that's where we're applying for the grant, justifiably so. But I wouldn't just, and then basically go, oh, we're going to have a disability access program around that as well. Because I'd be looking at that as an assessor going, how do the two correlate together? Indicatively, you can be part of a wider remit or wider plan for the club in terms of site development, but you don't have to justify one against the other at the end of the day. I've just given it as an indicative in terms of this is one of the focal areas that they want to focus on moving forward, not only in sport, but in sports facilities, is disability access. So quite happy for the club to still go ahead and apply for their drainage and for basically for the upgrade of the field without the disability component. As I said, if you can justify saying it as part of your master plan, that obviously this is part of stage 1, stage 2 is disability access thereafter, then great. Is that okay, folks?
Sounds good. Another question I have here, Craig from the Dural Centre, if you don't mind, I'll share his comments. That was, he said he's put, the centre's put in a number of applications over the last 4 years, the last 2 with a professional grant person, and they haven't got anything. The centre has put in millions of dollars to their own into the building, I guess, at the futsal centre there, and they're trying to get, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 now, and seem to be falling flat. Any advice there that you can provide, Keith?
We need to rejuvenate. We need to rejuvenate the ask, obviously, and look at it from an objective standpoint as to why they're declining. If it's a viable business case, we got to look at the political dynamic against it. We got to look at basically where it fits into the remit of what Office of Sport's prerogative is against that. So I'd suggest talking to someone knowledgeable against that, basically understands that and has that objectivity, and certainly that's what I do, but a number of other people do that as well. But it's you are at that threshold now of, you can't keep on doing what you're doing in terms of the same application put in again and again, because it's been rejected for other reasons outside of the application. So we just got to garner some feedback as best we can moving forward in the relationship management piece with Office of Sport, but also probably other entities as well, because you're ticking the box in what I'm hearing so far and putting together a case in terms of facility. You're hiring in a professional content writer. So again, we got to look at the mitigating circumstances as to why you're not getting the grant, basically. And it could be something minuscule, in terms of the application, but it could be a broader remit, which is beyond your remit, beyond your control, that basically has nothing to do with you. It's just a broader mindset elsewhere in terms of what they want to commit to funding in that region, and what are the identifiable growth as they see it, whether it be a sporting code or in the region itself, and what they want to fund.
Thanks, Keith. The question here, is it appropriate to link to supporting documents like strategic plans, facility plans, etc., or is it best to summarise main points in the application only?
Yeah, you won't get much of a chance to keep on uploading multiple documents. So if you can have a synopsis in the application in terms of a bullet points, that'd be fantastic. There's only so much you can upload anyway. And they're now actually, and another trick they're doing basically in grant applications these days, used to be able to attach multiple quotes or multiple letters of support. Now they say you have to assimilate them into one document or one attachment. So you're just going to be scanning and uploading all the time, basically. So you want to have the chance to put in those supplementary plans that you want to. You just got to relate that you have a plan in the club, whether it be a strategic plan or a business plan, and then some of the main points out of that of what you want to achieve in terms of 5-year or 10-year strategy of the club. And out of those points is why you're applying for this grant, because this grant fits into the protocol, procedures, and mindset of where the club wants to be.
Just on top of that, in terms of supporting documentation, strategic plans, a good document to use is the New South Wales Football Infrastructure Strategy that we completed last year. That's available on our football facilities website. I'll provide that link to all the applicants, to all the registered participants tonight, but it's always good to refer to those. There's some really good statistics in there and some information on infrastructure that you can use to provide evidence on why you need your on your certain project, e.g. 1 in 5 amenity buildings across New South Wales only 1 in 5 are gender neutral. So 4 out of 5 are not female friendly or gender neutral. So that's a great stat or information if you're looking to upgrade your amenity building at your facility, as an example. Can we get a copy of the slides? Yes, we can provide those. Do we allow for contingency costs in our budget?
Yeah, you can up to about 13%. Yeah, so that's what, as far as I'll go, basically. No more than that, basically, at the end of the day. And it's really about the financial astuteness of the club. I think it's a great question you asked there, Anthony, because a lot of clubs don't factor that in at all. You need to factor it in, all right? And you need to factor it in within the bandwidth that's acceptable and allowable as well, basically. So usually around the 10 to 13% mark. I've never seen more than that.
Another question here from Greg. We're all football people and we certainly have massive numbers of players, parents, constituents. How do we present ourselves as being great from a health perspective? How do we show we're saving lives? We're getting more, we're getting more people active and so forth. My point being, can we jump on board some of the broader Premier and New South Wales government priorities?
Yeah, great question, Greg, and I totally subscribe to it as well. I think you should. I dealt with a football club many years ago who partnered with the Heart Council, Department of Premier and Cabinet, and Mount Franklin, and did their after-school clinics, their holiday programs, and their Tuesdays and Thursday nights training, where they told the young ones basically they were banning fizzy drinks, banning lollies, and had a fresh food supplier, and Mount Franklin gave them bottled water. And that health and wellbeing initiative was supported by Department of Premier and Cabinet in New South Wales and the Heart Foundation in terms of funding to substantiate it over a year. So I totally subscribe to what you're saying. I think you should, as part of the broader remit of clubs, be definitely on the health and wellbeing narrative, because A, it's part of the government's narrative. B, they're trying to steer people away from New South Wales health in terms of the resourcing to put against that, and diabetes, which is growing in the population, and obesity, and not only in adults but in young people. So a club that has this initiative, that has insight and creates a program around health and well-being, is going to be very well received within government funding, beyond the remit of Office of Sport, back into the Department of Education, back into the Department of Health, Department of Community Services, wider opportunities. I think it's a great idea, and I totally think a lot of clubs should do it.
Next question, is there sample applications for different initiatives by successful football clubs which have submitted that we can look at, so we can have a better idea of the best process?
No, for issues of probity and confidentiality, you're not going to get it. You're going to get it at best a standard one, but they won't share those out, basically, because again, it's the pertinent information that there is confidential to the club and confidential to the funding body. So it's a question I always get asked, but no, not the case, unfortunately. They won't share that information with you.
Yeah, unless I guess the only other opportunity would be talking directly to a football club that you know that you might have a relationship with, who's put their application in, and they might be happy to share
exactly
their application with you. But other than that, we can't get the winning the successful applicants
no.
from the state government or any other grant provider.
And I think dovetailing on that, Daniel, you'll see from the last funding round and the previous funding rounds, going past the number of the years which they've listed on their website, there's a number of football clubs listed there. And again, back to your point on relationships about picking up the phone or sending an email going, mate, how did you do it? Can you give me some tips and tricks, basically, what worked for you, basically? And then not only how did you get the money, but how did you deliver it on the grant as well?
Absolutely. Another question here from Doll's Point. We were successful in obtaining a grant in 2017 for an upgrade of lights. However, before we were able to submit the grant request, there was substantial costs in architecture, surveys, geo surveys, etc., that we had to front up. If we were unsuccessful in the grant process, that's a substantial risk to a club. Is there a facility to support a club for the pre-work that is required?
No, unfortunately not. And this is why I think we have to look at this as a learning exercise tonight, and instead think about consolidating as a club. Because you're right, you're all volunteers. There's a lot of time and effort that goes into this. Basically, you got to look at making a decision pretty quick, given the 2-week time frame. Basically, do we pursue this, and what's a better strategic move for the club moving forward? And as I said at the outset, that's not just about grants. That's about really alternative revenue streams as well, right? That's fundraising, sponsorship, crowdfunding, bequests, which I see other clubs using, basically, high net worth individuals, donations. Not everything has to go into the grants basket. Yes, it's the largest amount of money. Yes, it's the better resource for infrastructure, without doubt. You're not going to get money necessarily anywhere else for that. That's government's obligation. But it's being tactile about it at the end of the day. There's no point putting in a haphazard application in the next 2 weeks, which is going to do something detrimentally to your club, rather than something adds value to your club at the end of the day.
As most of the club leaders are volunteers and have work commitments, and ensuring a good application will take many hours, are there specialists that we can engage to put an application together for clubs?
This is Irish bloke, but I can't think of his name right now. It'll come to me. There's many people out there. I mean, I do it obviously, but there's numerous other service providers out there, in terms of great grants writers that can write it for you as well, basically. Grants writers, what you need to ask them, obviously, is their success rate, whether they do on fee based on success, or they do a flat fee to do it, basically. So some do an hourly rate, some do a project rate, some do what they call an uplift fee, which the lawyers will be accustomed to, where they charge you 30% up front, and then they charge you the balance if you're successful in getting the funding. And some do fee based on success, where they just write the grant for you, and then basically you pay them the lump sum when you get the grant. And by the way, you can't take that money out of the grant to pay them as well. That's not allowed. So it's very much basically looking at those questions out there. But there are people out there that do it. Unfortunately, not so many in the sports area, because most of the grants writers, because the proliferation of not-for-profits and charities, given there's 47,000 of those in Australia, that's where you find most of the grants writers. So trying to find one with sports experience, there'll only be so many.
Question here: what are the word limits in the application and file size upload limits for attachments, as you can do the work to apply and then blow the upload at the last minute? So I guess in terms of size, there are obviously the word limits, I think, are listed in as part of the application,
as well as the size of the documents as well.
Yeah.
They stipulate that in the application as well, so that's stated up front to you as to what size document you can upload, as well as you said yourself, and it's the character count now as well, basically. I mean, we're getting down to a lot of standard government grant applications, or some of the answer looking for 250 words in an answer, others are looking for 500, or others are looking for 1500. They're the major demountables we're seeing in word counts now.
Yeah, I guess it's always good to, it's part of that word limit, etc. Just go in and have a look at what those word limits are before applying, and so you can. It's always a good tip, is do the application outside of the actual application form. Do it in a Microsoft Word document. Write it all up. Write all the answers to your questions. Get somebody else in the club or someone else who's not even part of the club to have a look at what you've written as part of the application. Just having a third party view on your application, so they can understand. If that person can understand what you're saying in your grant application, then the assessor's going to understand. If they can't, if someone else,
Exactly.
if this person can't understand it, then probably the assessor's not going to understand your application as well. So certainly a good opportunity to, do it offline as such, get someone else to read it, proofread it, all that kind of stuff, and then potentially.
And that's the majority of work that I do, I'll be honest with you, Daniel. Most clubs will write a draft themselves and then send it to me to play devil's advocate with a red pen. And I just track changes, make edits, make recommendations, basically, and, and I bill at an hourly rate to do that, or whatever the case. But you're right, I totally subscribe that. Whether you use a grants writer to do that, or you get a member of your committee to do that, or basically just someone else who's objectivity, another point of view, and just goes, I don't get it. What's the answer here? It doesn't make sense.
Very much so. I think that's all the questions. Going through thank yous here. A lot of information to digest. And this is a comment here from Andrew at Manly Vale. Probably too soon for us to make an application this time, that's exactly what Keith mentioned. I think I know a number of people here that I've spoken to previously about grant applications, and I'm fairly honest with clubs that come forward and want some advice on projects. If you aren't ready, don't waste your time. You've got 2 weeks left. If you haven't even spoken to your local council, if you haven't got letters of support, all that is difficult to get in the last 2 weeks as such, and running around getting letters of support from local council, getting certainly if your project needs a DA, then there's no chance, there's no point of even applying. So certainly this has hopefully opened your mind up a bit. If you're applying, great, as Keith said at the beginning, and I'm here to provide a letter of support. If you do have a project, please get in touch with me if you are applying, and I'm happy to provide that statement of support that's required as part of the application. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you can. What else did I want to mention as well before? Just a quick question's come in. How do you do joint submissions between multiple clubs, i.e. cricket, football, using the same grounds?
Don't get me started on that. I'll be here all night. That's, as Tom Cruise would say, that's mission impossible to a degree. It's very, very hard, right? And you've got to get a clear consensus of opinion. And it's a great question, and I've seen a lot of entities do it, right? So I know a number, like the other sporting codes, tennis have collaborated with netball, who've collaborated with basketball in terms of ground sharing and facility usage, basically. I know one case in Chatswood where that happened in Sydney. But yeah, just the MOU in the first instance, memorandum of understanding of how you're going to use the facilities between each other, show the ground sharing arrangement, show the facility usage, and show basically how you can all work it out between seasons and between codes. That's one evidence base of that. And then a commitment from each of them to resource it, and a commitment to each of them to contribute. The biggest default, or the biggest worry I have, is that one sporting code ends up doing most of the work in terms of delivering on the facility and maintaining the facility, and we don't want that.
Absolutely. All right. Just I guess from mine, if there's any other questions, please. Are letters of support used for round 1 6 months ago acceptable, or they need to be updated each time?
Updated, yeah, they need to be updated, Brett. Yeah, basically need to be, yeah. If you could, please, that'd be great.
Yeah, just send me a note, Brett. Happy to update yours from last time. But yeah, anyone else's that hasn't got one or needs one, yeah, please flick me an email. Tell me what your project is all about briefly, and I'm happy to provide that letter of support for you.
Daniel and Keith, can I ask a question? It's a lot easier to ask rather than type it all out. It's actually 2 questions. One is, in terms of shovel ready, what's the time frame in your mind that if funds are actually allocated and received, what's the lag period that you've actually got before they would consider it unready?
So the time frame, you're talking about the time frame that you have that basically before going into the action and delivering on it.
Yeah, so you're talking about shovel ready. We've got a project with council that we're looking at, which is a field redevelopment. Yeah. But the growth period for the field is actually September to say November.
Yes.
And we're probably looking at it for next year, given that we've obviously missed it this year.
Yeah.
So if we applied now, obviously it's 12 months before we start. That's obviously too long. What would be an acceptable shovel-ready period from receipt of money to actually when the shovel hits the ground?
Hypothetically, if I gave you this money this November, if you were successful at work recipient, I'd expect you to start on the project in January or February.
Okay, so it's a couple of months.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, if we make an application by October the 8th, what would be the period in terms of both review, consent, and then provision of the money?
I think
sorry, go ahead, Daniel.
I was going to say, yeah, I think I saw some information from the Office of Sport saying that they're looking to get the agreement signed before Christmas or early January.
Correct,
so they'll make an announcement probably before Christmas. One would imagine, if everything is all okay with the projects, etc. And obviously, again, how we started this conversation with, we're in COVID at the moment, we're in lockdown. They want to get this money out as quickly as they can, and they want to make some announcements. They want to have some feel-good stories come out. There's been a lot of negativity and everything about lockdown. They want to get this. They want to probably get the process done fairly quickly. Get the announcements done before Christmas. Probably, I'd say January to sign those agreements and then work to commence. And I'm pretty sure I did see. I think in the guidelines it might say that the project must start before June 2022. I think, but I need to just double check that. But yeah, there is a comment there. When the project is
That is correct. So you have some latitude up until the end of financial year next year, Anthony. Okay. But the assessment period, so 8th of October, they'll take a month to assess it. They'll start acknowledging to successful recipients in November, basically, and they'll basically try to instigate the actual cash flow out to clubs before Christmas. Then with the dispensation, you've got 6 months to start works.
All right, thank you.
Well, sorry, can I just jump in? The guidelines in terms of that deadline, that funding agreement, requires that the project is completed by the 30th of June 23.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So the start date would be basically the January as I prescribed, but you're right there and jumping in there, Craig, and thank you for that. That basically you got 6 months to complete it, basically, at the end of the day. So it goes back again, Anthony, to the cyclical nature of what you're talking about, and actually the time frame you have to put something together, which is 6 months. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, thank you.
And certainly they want to be, I think the state government would like to have these projects, if possible, completed before March 2023, which is the next state election. That would be any of those projects that can be completed before that time will be probably potentially, could be a part of an assessment saying if they can finish it before that time, fantastic. As Keith has mentioned before, the opportunity for an MP to come down and cut a ribbon weeks before a state election is certainly appealing for the state government.
Very much so.
All right, I think that concludes us for tonight. So firstly, thanks to Keith.
Thanks, folks.
Appreciate your time tonight. As I mentioned at the start, this is one of a few seminars that we will do on grant writing, and we might focus on a particular grant again once they open, particularly something like the multi-sport community facility grant when that opens. So we'll have a look at that. We'll keep you informed again. I said, please note, if you are applying, or even if your local council is applying for your venue, for your facility, get council or get yourselves to get in touch with me, and I'm happy to provide that letter of support for the club or for the council. I've already had a number of projects come past my desk already. So yeah, get them to me as soon as you can. Please don't come and ask me on Thursday, the day before, for the letter. I mean, I'll try to get it to you, but the earlier you can get it to me, then I can get it to you fairly quickly as well. Because I said I've got a number of them already churning through at the moment. So simply send me your details, what the project is, what the venue is, etc. Just give me some highlights of that for me. Thanks to everyone that's logged on tonight. Appreciate your time. A bit over an hour of your time during lockdown, and hopefully we see everyone face to face and back on the football field in not too distant future. So keep an eye out on our social media. I'll send some emails out for the next webinars when they do occur. That's it from me. Take care of yourselves, everybody. And if you are making a submission, good luck. And hopefully you've taken some tips here from Keith this evening that can help you moving forward.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves. Get that grant. Good luck.